I'm Zahoor Ahmad. I am currently D&I lead for the Ministry of Defence in the Defence Equipment Support section. And I was chair of AFSA in its inception for the first 4 or 5 years. And I'm here at our 10-year point as a former chair. AFSA is a real sort of melting pot of ideas and initiatives, of energy, and it's one of those organizations which has an incredible amount of agility and drive to move things forward. It's always looking at ideas with regards to innovation, with regards to areas that we can improve on, and it's because of the various different parts of AFSA, what you find is the whole is always so much greater than the sum of its parts, and the sum of its parts are always increasing. So kind of almost like this ball of momentum which has been moving through the National Fire Service in Britain, and always picking up more and more momentum as it's moving along. And so ultimately it's an incredible force for good, and everyone who's been involved in it, bar none, I think have had an incredibly positive experience, whether they are an associated organisation, like a corporate member or a sponsor, or whether as an individual being part of those, being part of the committee, or as a chairman. I mean, for myself particularly, I spent several years as chair, and it was always a very positive and very worthwhile time that I spent with AFSA. So even, I've chaired other conferences and other events, but none have been as fun, as exciting, as interesting, and thought-provoking, and as honest as AFSA are. So in AFSA there's no BS, can I say BS? Yeah. There's none of that. It is actually much more sort of really focused around, let's be honest about where we are, and let's be straight about what the future might hold for us. Well, I suppose when I was chair, there was just a small number of us. Jack Tarr and the founding members, that were around, Manjit, and but there were a number of willing volunteers, that believed in the mission, believed in the idea, believed in the vision that had been created with us. We then, over a period, relatively quickly, we picked up a lot of steam. So we picked up speed, and we managed to get immediately a number of fire services involved. And then slowly, as time progressed, the events became bigger and bigger and bigger and stronger. So, even our first conference, we had a couple of hundred people present, and from right across the UK. Some people were interested and thinking, or curious. Others were sort of really getting a lot out of it. But the fact that we were all the time building those foundations. Yeah. So we had no budget. We were a new organisation. We didn't know whether this was one of those things that would appear for a short period and then disappear. But no, it was sustainable, and it remained. And that was one of the things that I was very keen on right up front, was that whatever we set up needs to be sustainable. There's no point having a good year, have a few conferences, and then it disappears again. So I'm really pleased at the 10-year mark to see that actually that worked. It was sustainable, number one. Number two, we were really keen to get a really broad membership. That's worked also, so that's fantastic. And number three, I suppose, the key achievements during that period was that we began to expand on the subject base that we were exploring. Yeah. So it was diversity, it was equality, it was inclusion, it was all of those things. But then it was also a lot of the broader societal stuff as well. So whereas it's nice to have these events, it's nice to have the nice dinners and things like that, and cultural events. But actually, the bottom line always is we're trying to improve society. We're trying to improve the way that people live. Whether that's through fire risk, whether it's through accidents, whether it's through a whole range of the other associated risks as well. So improvement in equality of all people, and that's also been quite good as well, in that our membership has not been just Asian; it's broader. It was always designed like that. I think everything that we set out to accomplish, we did, and then some. So it was very, very pleasing to be here today to say, yes, it worked. The objectives for the future is AFSA is one of these things where its ambition is always going to be great. And I would never ever want to curtail that, because that's where some of the great the benefits come as well. If you are ambitious, shoot for the stars, you'll hit the moon. Yeah, so the ambition is good. It's important that we focus on where the National Fire Service particularly has, and other public sector agencies as well, have failed with regards to, or are still struggling with regards to creating that representative organisation, and creating or making sure that those indicators of inequality in outside are being reduced. Our service delivery is more equitable. It doesn't matter whether you're in the NHS or whether you're in the police or whether you're in the fire service. But if you are of a certain protected characteristic, then the quality of service that you are receiving should not be any less. Yeah? So simply because you live in a poorer area, you should not be at a greater risk to fire. And if you are, then we need to mitigate that. And that's really the fundamental issue with regards to what we're trying to do here. So that should always remain. That said, as an organisation, we need to maintain the organisation as well. So, part of the role of any chair or any committee is to maintain the organisation, but to understand that when it comes to influencing, if people or other organisations are taking their foot off the gas, then you don't have a status quo. Things do tend to fall backwards. Some of the things that are disappointing is the amount of progress that's been made nationally from when the recruitment targets were set in 2000, 2001 to where we are now. We maybe hit, I think, a third of where we wanted to get to. So that's disappointing. However, we did hit a third. Yeah. So if we hadn't done that, we wouldn't have even got that far as well. So we do have a base to build on. But what we want to do is just keep an eye on everything, to make sure that the moment that things start falling backwards, and this is a role that AFSA should be engaged in, that if things start falling backwards, that we tackle it and push it forward. Yeah. Particularly around, one of the things that I was quite interested in is, the way that in 2001, for example, following the Race Relations Amendment Act, fire services were producing race equality schemes, having action plans, engaged in a whole range of different types of activities. I'd like to see where we are now with those things, yeah. And it's interesting because the moment that they no longer became a legal requirement, people weren't measured against them, they dropped off, yeah. And that's not good, because there's a performance benefit in doing them. The legal requirement is the bare minimum. There's if you are good at diversity and inclusion and equality, then you are a good performing organisation, and that message needs to be really pushed forward.